you actually had some evidence, some screenshots even of text messages you were getting way back before the premiere as you were calling out Blake Lively's bad PR.
What if everything you thought about Blake Lively's lawsuit was just the tip of the iceberg? Judge Lyman is now directly questioning if evidence was obtained illegally, and the fallout could change everything. Why did her team use a secret shell company to subpoena private messages? And what kind of bombshell texts are at the center of this case? Stick around because the answers will leave you floored.
Fan of Justin, you were excited for the casting, and it sounds like you're just more annoyed that all this is distracted from what's important in the theme of the book and the movie, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
You're not an anti-Blake content creator or part of any retaliation campaign?
No, I had people ask me if I was paid to speak positively on Justin or negatively on Blake. That's the thing too with the whole smear campaign. I don't know if anybody made a video about the marketing before I did. I know that kind of started after mine blew up. Nobody ever reached out to me. Nobody ever paid me. Nobody ever asked me to do that. Nobody put that opinion in my head. I saw the marketing when I was looking into, what's going on with them. I saw the marketing, went, and made that video. That's what happened.
Right. And as someone who watched your videos, you weren't being mean towards Blake. I mean, you were calling out the tone deaf approach, which I think is valid. And I'm looking at it objectively, which I know you're not trying to get in the middle or pick any sides. It's frustrating. It was interesting because we also spoke about the fact that maybe there was some big idea of like, look, let's not make this movie about DV because maybe we'll get more people in the theaters that way. And then they might see that type of relationship on screen. And then actually we got to them in a clever way, secret way. But as smart as that might have been, that's not what Blake was doing either, was it?
I don't think it was. No, that doesn't seem like.
Blake Lively's lawsuit just took a wild turn. And at the center of it all is a mysterious name nobody saw coming. Van Zandt Inc. Now, Van Zandt isn't a PR firm, an agent, or even a legitimate business tied to the legal dispute. It's a shell company. Blake's legal team created this entity with one specific purpose: to file a John Doe lawsuit that would allow them to subpoena private communications. That sounds shady? It's because it is. They didn't just casually drop this shell company into the mix. They used it to quietly target Jennifer Abel's former publicist, Stephanie Jones, and her PR agency, Jones Work. But here's where it gets really interesting. None of the people involved were even notified at the time. The subpoena issued through Van Zandt Inc. wasn't exactly handled with the kind of transparency you'd expect in a case like this. Instead, it cut corners, avoiding the otherwise standard legal protocols that ensure all parties are properly informed. According to critics, this tactic was designed to keep things under wraps, preventing Abel and others from stepping in to challenge the subpoena in court. One legal analyst even stated that any attorney would have likely quashed it immediately if they had known about it. So why the secrecy? It's hard to ignore the possibility that Van Zandt was used to obscure Blake's team's involvement, or at the very least make it harder to connect the dots directly to her. Judge Lyman isn't letting this slip through the cracks, though. During a recent court hearing, he openly questioned the use of this shell company and what it could mean for the legitimacy of the evidence collected. Legal experts are following this closely, especially because Blake's team appears to be treading a fine line. The materials obtained through Van Zandt include text messages and other private communications, which may have been gathered without proper oversight. The problem: the evidence is deemed inadmissible. This whole maneuver could end up hurting Blake more than it helps her, a prospect that's already stirring major backlash. Here's where things could explode even further. The use of a shell company in court isn't unheard of, but it comes with a ton of controversy. Legal commentators suggest that this move might have been an attempt to launder evidence, which basically means they were trying to legitimize questionable information by wrapping it in official legal documents. If that's the case, it could be viewed as a breach of ethical responsibilities, or worse, a violation of fiduciary duties. Combine that with Judge Lyman's pointed criticisms, and you've got a situation on the verge of unraveling entirely. The ripple effect of Judge Lyman's scrutiny. could go beyond just this single case. If he digs deeper, more questionable tactics might come to light, raising bigger questions about how far Blake's team was willing to go to protect her. And remember, the subpoena tied to Van Zandt Inc. is directly linked to the bombshell evidence we're about to dive into. What they uncovered might change everything, but how they got it, that's the part no one's going to forget.
Come out against Justin, and tragically, it isn't only from Blake, which hasn't actually come to fruition yet.
No.
Everyone else has stayed pretty quiet. Now, granted, they may be afraid given how everyone's reacted, but still, you'd think at this point they would have stood tall with Blake when everyone was on her side to really definitively set the tone, set the tone and the facts. They seem to be avoiding it like the plague now, which makes me wonder, is that true? Or was Blake sort of getting these women to sort of agree with her due to her own power mounts? You ask where it's come from, and it's the standard, oh, my family's in the industry, blah, 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 blah. Take it as a grain of salt. But it all feels very manipulative, and it feels exactly like the things they're accusing Justin of when I see this. That's why it was so shocking to me, because they're claiming, oh, he's playing dirty. But here we are on August 8th before any of it's going down. I mean, honestly, I ask you, no wonder he hired a PR crisis person, right? If this is the kind of stuff that was out there and the things that are bubbling over, and they're going to start putting some stuff that he disagrees with, whether it happened or not, he's going to disagree. They clearly disagreed throughout the film. Do you believe he had the right to hire a team to try to combat the PR and clearly go against the secret tactics that Blake was clearly going to do and able to afford?
Well, I mean, like I said to you the last time that we spoke, I can't speak at all to whether or not her allegations of what happened on set are true. I don't want to, especially if they are. I wasn't there. I don't know that. However, when it comes to smear campaign and retaliation, being the criticism that she received online, that is what I wholeheartedly believe is organic. If that's what we're speaking about, yeah, I'm sure, I would have hired a PR team too. Like if I didn't start that and this was organic and this was people's genuine, valid criticism, that's not me doing anything wrong. That's not me coming at you. This is valid criticisms of a mistake that you made and that you're doubling down on, essentially, right? I mean, there's multiple aspects to the lawsuits that are happening now. There's what's happened on set. There's the smear campaign and the online criticism that she received, which is separate than what happened on set. And then there's all of the rollout that happens.
What could be so explosive about these text messages that they had to be obtained so secretively? That's the question swirling around the subpoena issued through Van Zandt Inc., which targeted none other than Stephanie Jones, a publicist deeply connected to the alleged retaliation campaign at the heart of this case. The contents of these messages are claimed to hold proof of a coordinated effort to undermine a former associate. But the real issue, it's how these messages were obtained in the first place. The use of a shell corporation like Van Zandt Inc. to issue the subpoena was already raising red flags. But now the focus has shifted to whether these communications were acquired legally at all. Experts in legal ethics don't mince their words when it comes to this. If personal messages are acquired without proper notice or due process, it's not just unethical. It can render them inadmissible entirely. Subpoenaing private communications without adequate transparency risks breaching fiduciary duties, which is a whole new potential layer of trouble for Blake Lively's legal team. Judge Lyman hasn't held back his concerns either in evaluating the materials obtained. He's questioned their legitimacy and whether they could have been fraudulently concealed or improperly accessed. He's also made it clear that the relevance of these communications hinges on their legality, which means the entire case could hinge on his final ruling here. A misstep in how this evidence was handled doesn't just affect the courtroom. It could lead to serious repercussions for the legal team that orchestrated the maneuver. Now, let's talk about what makes evidence inadmissible. In cases like this, the court operates on a set of strict rules designed to prevent misconduct or abusive process. If evidence is gathered without following these rules, such as by violating someone's privacy or circumventing proper oversight, it risks being thrown out completely. Think of it like pulling a thread on an old sweater. One loose string starts to unravel everything that seemed intact. That's exactly what could happen here. If those text messages are ruled inadmissible, it's not just a setback for Lively's legal team. It could flip the entire narrative against her. To complicate things further, the messages themselves allegedly detail retaliation efforts, but their credibility comes into question if the methods used to obtain them were dubious. And if Judge Lyman rules that this evidence was mishandled, it doesn't just weaken Blake Lively's case, sets a precedent likely to ripple through the Second Circuit where future cases will be judged under even stricter scrutiny. Here's where it gets even more precarious. If these communications are dismissed, not only will Blake's claims start to look shakier, but it could crack open the possibility of counterclaims, abuse of process lawsuits, allegations of privacy violations. These aren't far-fetched outcomes if the court determines misconduct. And while the legal stakes are sky high, the public's attention isn't going anywhere. In a high-profile case like this, what happens in the courtroom often spills right into the court of public opinion. Ultimately, this isn't just about the paper trail. It's about controlling the public narrative.
To me, is that, Baldoni's attorney, Friedman, is not, he's very smart and tactically savvy. And this was a tactical decision to not amend the complaint, which the judge told him how to fix it and come back and have a shot. And they decided not to do it. And the decision not to follow, these underlying hints of like, hey, if you really want to keep this claim, this is how you fix it. There's one of two decisions that were made. One, they didn't have the facts to satisfy what the judge wanted, keep those possible remaining claims. Or two, the other possible thing is that they're just like, listen, we're winning the PR war. People are upset about this. Let's just stop worrying about what pleadings, and let's just get into discovery, and let's really get into this case and make our blows that way instead of delaying this because the judge, did something we didn't expect. And the only other third thing, and you keep bringing up appeal, is that there's a chance, although these are very rarely granted, that they could try to do what's called a writ, which is, go to the appeal before you're kind of supposed to. But I think that would be a waste of time. But it's a really interesting tactical decision not to at least try, because the judge kind of told them this is what's missing. And if you have this, chances are I won't kick these two out. And they decided not to do that, which means either they don't have it or they decided, let's get into discovery. Let's start really making real pain, which is getting into, tell Blake that she has to be deposed and, depose everybody around her, get that kind of pain. People don't like that. And that may encourage other things to happen that Baldoni and Friedman decided they do want at the end versus try to resuscitate their complaint.
Well, let's get into that because I'm glad you brought it there because exactly. Okay, so now we got Blake's deposition, which was supposed to be yesterday, but it sounds like it may have been moved. Still trying to find that. I'll confirm that. But what is that enough for her to want to settle? Is a settlement now the next key, you think, Chris? Is that what you think Brian's maybe doing now that Taylor Swift's texts are relevant? Is that going to be a scare tactic that maybe is a win enough that Justin's team think, you know what, we're going to get her here? Or is there a version of this where Blake, now that she has the control, it's her case only, couldn't she just pull the rug and say, you know what, out of respect of all these people who are being dragged in needlessly, I'm withdrawing to save face? And wouldn't that just end all of this without him getting the chance to even defend himself in court? What are the next steps that are actually going to benefit Justin?
Yeah, I mean, I think when we were looking at this earlier, I assume both sides were looking for an off-ramp here to, get out of this with dignity and both claim victory. But with this ruling, there's a component that goes along with it, which is a mandatory fee shifting. So all of her reasonable attorney's fees that she incurred in resisting the complaint that Justin and Wayfair brought against her and the others, the court has to order Justin and Wayfair to reimburse her for all those attorney's fees under Civil Code Section 47.1. That is going to be a huge amount of money, and I can't imagine she's going to walk away from that. So that just made it so much more difficult for just some settlement to happen without him potentially reaching into his pocket and pay. Yes, and I agree totally with Ron that maybe this is going to just be a discovery war and go get this information and publicize it and embarrass her. But the problem is that she can just show up for that depot and be uncooperative. Eventually, she will be forced to answer the questions and could be penalized for not cooperating, but she could delay it. So I think it's very difficult to get a walk away unless there is something out there that is going to be so embarrassing to her that it's more important to her ego to drop this case than to pursue it. And you got to remember who we're dealing with. I mean, this is the person who set him up, at least it looks like, set him up with these claims, went after him very aggressively, and then for all of a sudden, if that's truly who she is, for her to like change her stripes and saying, oh, I'm going to be a good person and do the right thing, then we may be asking for too much.
So if she drops the case, then who has to pay for it?
Well, right now,
So-
I'm sorry. The next step is he's going to have to pay her for the attorney's fees.
Right, but so then I'll go to you, Ron. Why wouldn't she just drop it then at this point and play like I said? Well, all too many friends are getting involved. It's getting too ugly. I want to stand up for myself, but too much. Couldn't she play that card and then suddenly she wins it all?
Before the movie even hit theaters, something strange landed in Nadia G. Reed's inbox. The TikTok creator, known for her viral videos critiquing the marketing strategy for It Ends With Us, said she was contacted by someone warning her to take her videos down. The message wasn't a simple suggestion. It came with ominous undertones. According to Nadia, the sender claimed a lot happened on set that will eventually come out. But if I were you, I'd take those videos down. Then, in a classic Hollywood twist, the message added, Blake is as sweet and innocent as ever, insisting that Blake's husband was supposedly there to protect her. The timing, suspicious to say the least. The message arrived just before the film's promotional phase went into overdrive. Nadia's videos had already amassed millions of views by this point. Her critique focused on the movie's tone-deaf marketing decisions, something she felt passionate about as a regular creator, not as part of a coordinated campaign. She publicly described her commentary as independent and valid with no hidden agenda. But this message implied otherwise. The sender suggested that Blake Lively and her female co-stars were victims of something worse behind the scenes, positioning the criticism of their work as harmful to already vulnerable women. For Nadia, this felt more like an attempt to silence her than a sincere dialogue about the movie or its press strategy. Now, let's pause for a second. Why reach out to someone like Nadia at all? Here's one theory. This wasn't about her post specifically, but about keeping control of the larger narrative surrounding the film. Hollywood PR strategy often revolves around shaping public opinion. And creators like Nadia are increasingly influential in how audiences perceive entertainment. By contacting her directly, Blake's team or someone connected to the movie might have been trying to hit pause on a conversation spiraling out of their reach. This wasn't just about one critical voice. It could have been about setting an example for anyone else considering calling out the marketing flaws. But what does this say about the overall strategy? This message framed Blake as a victim, someone who needed protecting. Adjusting public perception to cast her as innocent shows how PR teams sometimes blur the line between genuine communication and manipulation. It's one thing to combat false rumors, but asking someone to stop expressing an opinion, especially with veiled threats of information that will come out, raises all kinds of ethical red flags. Experts have frequently pointed out that narratives controlled in this way often backfire in the long run, especially when social media users sense a lack of authenticity. Once audiences feel lied to, it's nearly impossible to regain their trust. Here's where this gets even trickier. The content of that message could now live on as evidence in its own right. Whether intentional or not, reaching out in this way left a paper trail. The case against Blake's team escalates further. These attempts to manage criticism could be framed as part of a broader plan to control how her story is told. And if that's the case, it's not just Nadia's videos under scrutiny, it's the entire approach to handling the backlash surrounding this project.
She had some evidence, some screenshots even of text messages you were getting way back before the premiere, as you were calling out Blake Lively's bad PR. Now, the reason this stood out for me, this was kind of shocking, and we're absolutely going to make this part of the doc, and I was going to sort of save it, but I was like, I don't really want to save it. There's so much important stuff out there. I want to make sure everybody knows what happened here. So that way, if anybody else got messages like this, please reach out to me, share them with me privately, whatever you want to do, because this just feels super shady. Now, before we go to United Explain, I just want to, here's where it sort of started. You had a couple TikToks, innocent TikToks, very neutral, in my perspective. I watched them all again, just calling out, well, there's some weird drama, and you literally call, he's an unproblematic king, she's an unproblematic queen. You were team everybody, maybe a little shade at Colleen Hoover, because I guess you didn't love parts of the book, but, all very neutral and sort of you're very well spoken the way you did it. And then as you sort of got into it further, you called out the PR marketing, which a lot of people did. The fact that Justin was in the background and now it's all fun and fluffy, as you're saying here, and it's not raising awareness to the heart of the film. A very valid thing that a lot of people were noticing. And you were one of the earliest TikToks that I could see too that was sort of calling this out. Now, you netted almost 4 million views off this TikTok, correct?
Yeah, a little over that, I think.
Yeah, and so as I go through and we're scrolling through, so the TikToks, it definitely blew up. And you didn't lean in and start making your channel and it ends with us trauma channel. You did do some follow-ups, but as this is it. She did about 6 or so TikToks on the topic as they were exploding, as everybody was. And what's interesting is because it exploded, can you set this up before we go to the screenshot? You started getting messages from people asking you to pull the video, correct?
I did, yeah. Yeah, I got a message, it was prior to opening weekend, basically telling me that these things were going to come out about Blake Lively, that she was going to be a victim and that all the women on the set were actually victims, and that the last thing I would want to do would be to speak negatively on victims, and that I should take my video down. And basically, allegations were going to come out against Justin Baldoni.